low, depression, anxiety, I wouldn't have been the one to reach out.
I cried with relief when my water bill went on to a low-income basic rate. I never see any money for myself. I can't save because no money left over. I might as well chuck it out the window.
I might not be able to deal with letters or emails straight away, so take that into account.
I'm usually the one that helps other people out, not the one who needs the help.
We might all be in the same boat at the moment, but some of us are clinging on at the back.
I'm a father. It's my job to carry the burden and not ask for help. But losing my job has really crushed me.
There's no chance of returning to work. There was little chance before the crisis, but none now. I'm far from destitute, but the future is less rosy.
Although I've had to work all my life, I have sat for 2 years in December with no hot water, no electricity, no food, and the third day it happened I had to phone 999 as I was ill.
I used to get lifts at discount stores like Aldi and Lidl, but now I'm trying to get delivery slots for supermarkets like Sainsbury's and Tesco's, where the products are more expensive.
I was tempted to buy my daughter a Barbie dream house for Christmas that she really wanted. However, it means putting it on a store card, which means interest to pay. There's no way we can afford it outright, especially as we've been relying on food banks to help us.
Some people are not bothered, they don't listen to you.
I'm not good at forms, I prefer to chat through it.
They should have some sort of scheme for people on benefits.
I saw lovely decorations today in the Asda book and I thought I'd love to have those. But I only have £10 left until my money comes on Saturday. I need extra electric as the heating is on more now. So the electric comes first.
To be honest, I had no spare cash for 2 weeks and have been living on soup and sandwiches since then. My universal credit went into my bank today and I've been straight to the supermarket to fill my fridge and cupboards month. This afternoon I will go online and pay all the bills. I don't expect to have much left. It makes me feel pretty helpless when the money comes in and by the end of the day it's all gone.
Welcome. You have just heard water customers' stories. These are real experiences and experiences that we have put front and centre of the review. Customers who've had to make the difficult and impossible choice between paying their bills, buying food, or heating their home. At the launch of the independent review in October, you heard about the commitment of the sector to show leadership to address these issues. And this morning, you'll hear the recommendations of the independent review. We want to create a simpler, fairer, and better system to support customers who are struggling to pay their water bills. With your support, our plans will make that a reality and ensure that no one in England and Wales ever has to worry about being unable to afford their water bills again. These proposals will also break down the barriers to existing help and make things easier for all customers. In these difficult times, we know that people are craving the kind of certainty that our changes would deliver. Millions of households would have one less thing to worry about at a time when many of us are anxious about our finances and the future. Never more has this been true as now, with the effects of COVID being felt and the long-term impacts on people and their finances emerging. Comparing last year to this, there has been a 30% increase in the uptake of social tariffs. The recommendations are comprehensive, covering 10 areas with 40 actions, some of which can be taken immediately. They've been carefully designed to ensure that individual circumstances are considered, especially the 3 million families who may not qualify for a social tariff, but are struggling and do need a different kind of help. We have sought throughout to highlight examples of best practice and provide a framework so that the best in the sector is accessible to all. And we also highlight the opportunities for change and the problems that need addressing, including that support differs depending on where you live.
We kicked off the independent affordability review on the 22nd of October last year, just before the introduction of the second national lockdown. We knew it was vital to move at pace, but also to be extremely thorough, leaving no stone unturned and gathering evidence and insights needed to formulate recommendations capable of delivering peace of mind for those facing or at risk of financial vulnerability. Strong and independent governments guided our work. We established a project working group, a steering group, and a stakeholder advisory group. That group provided expert input and challenge in relation to the direction and delivery of the review. Members included a range of external stakeholders, including DEFRA, Welsh Government, Water UK, Ofwat, the Money Advice Trust, National Energy Action, and academics. The main information gathering phase of the review took place between October and the end of December. We issued a call for evidence, which attracted 37 responses from a range of interested parties and experts. We also had a series of stakeholder discussions to raise awareness of the review and gather further input. Both provided useful insights. In the same period, we also commissioned several research projects to help further inform our thinking. Omnibus research by Yonder tested views on awareness and views on social tariffs. Sheffield Hallam University undertook a cross-sector review of affordability support for us. DGS research interviewed low-income households to understand their experiences of water bill affordability and support, including how their situation has been affected by the pandemic, their relationship with their water company, and their communication preferences. We were also able to gain very valuable insights from work commissioned by Water UK to model the current scale of the water affordability problem. The next phase of the work involved us bringing together and considering these insights to help form and evaluate options. In doing so, we did further work to test our ideas and thinking with customers using online discussion groups, as well as commissioning independent quality assurance of our work on social tariffs. We also continued our dialogue with key stakeholders such as Ofwat, Water UK and water companies to ensure we were taking account of their views in formulating recommendations that we're sharing with you today. We're extremely grateful for the hugely valuable advice, guidance and support we've received from individuals and organisations during the last 7 months. We believe it has helped us to deliver a report and recommendations which give sharp focus to the needs of customers and set out a roadmap to ensure these can be met now and in the future.
At least 1 in 10 households struggling to afford their water bills. So it's a really big problem that we need to confront. I think water companies have done well to try and address some of these challenges, but more needs to be done, particularly around consistency.
It's just such an important time to review the support that water companies can give to people in vulnerable circumstances. And if we're honest, what we really need is a proper review, done like the way that CCW have done it, to ensure that we just raise the standard, the consistency of support across the whole industry, and for the industry to see why it's needed and what steps they have to take themselves in order that they understand and can provide the right level of support.
So when I was asked to join the stakeholder advisory group for this review, I was really pleased to have the opportunity to use the data that I've got, having been in the debt advice sector for more than 10 years, the insights that I have from that world of debt advice, to really think about how do those solutions work for people that struggle to afford to pay, struggle to engage, and who desperately need that help.
So I was really pleased to be able to come on, first of all, just to be part of the conversation and the challenge, and then to bring a little bit of the insight from the energy sector and the work that happens to protect people in fuel poverty. Because I think one of the roles that I had, other than generally being on the advisory board, was to make sure that we didn't assume that all the lessons from the energy sector were the right ones, but where they were the right ones, that we understood how they may be applicable and how they could work for water companies and for the benefit of water households.
The most important thing that I would want taken forward from this review is a single national social tariff. There's too much inconsistency.
Really pleased to see the consistency around social tariffs, although I'd like it to go a bit further. What is so important is that water companies step forward and don't just sit back. and wait for vulnerable households to present themselves. Now that seems a really simple thing to say, but it's about the data that companies hold, it's about the way they understand their communities, it's about the proactive nature of their customer service, it's about the cultures, things that we can do. Let's not wait for problem debt and for people to approach us and say we can't afford the bill. Do what we can to understand the problem and step forward. Be proactive. I think it was the fundamental lesson that's come out of how many of the essential utilities did and did not step up to the challenge. The review, it had a devil's own job very quickly to bring together lots of different interests, competing interests, and cajole and direct them to accept their responsibilities and what could be done. I think really it needed CCW to do it, and it's going to need CCW to continue to push and advocate, because we can all agree stuff. And that can stay on the shelf. So we need it to be implemented and to be delivered and to be monitored. And I think it was really important that the CCW did the work.
Hello, I'm delighted to share with you the recommendations from the Affordability Review. As you heard, the review considered a raft of evidence and listened to many voices in order to understand where improvements are needed. Once implemented, the recommendations and actions from the review would represent a step change in the breadth and quality of the help that's available. In forming the recommendations, the review looked at issues from a number of different perspectives. That of someone who needs help right now, the position of someone who is only just making ends meet and could fall into difficulties in the future, and the perspective of everyone else. And it's important to mention that last group because the COVID pandemic has shown how circumstances can change very quickly, and someone who doesn't need help today might need it in the future. So with those perspectives in mind, I'm going to run through the main recommendations from the review. So let's start with social tariffs. The review proposes a new consistent baseline for support in the form of a single social tariff for England and Wales. The tariff would be co-designed following three guiding principles. The first one is that the support would be targeted at lifting people out of water poverty. That would mean the tariff is efficient as it allocates resources based on need. 2, there would be consistent eligibility criteria across England and Wales, ending the current postcode lottery. And 3, it would be funded centrally from a single pot. And this means that costs are distributed fairly and don't disproportionately impact on those who can least afford to pay. So no matter where you live, whether it's Newquay, Newcastle or Newport, the support on offer would be the same. This isn't just good news for the 1.5 million households in England and Wales who struggle to afford their bills yet don't get the support they need. All customers would benefit from the safety net that the single social tariff brings, should they ever need it. There are choices to be made about how this is funded, and those choices are for government. As part of the review, we considered how much the single social tariff would cost if it was funded through water bills. The long-term impact on annual water bills is estimated to be, on average, £6. So at around 50p a month, that's a price worth paying to end water poverty. Now, we're acutely aware that no one welcomes bill rises, even if they are small, as this can disproportionately impact those who are only just making ends meet. And that's why the review paid particular attention to this group to stop them falling into financial difficulties. The old proverb, prevention is better than the cure, is a bit of a cliche, but it's really pertinent when it comes to water poverty. Keeping bills permanently lower through helping people become more water efficient and offering more certainty to hard-pressed consumers who would benefit from switching to a meter but are reluctant to do so are just two of the actions within the review to prevent people from slipping into difficulties. And I wanted to specifically flag those two actions because they touch on another huge challenge that the water sector faces, which is climate change. Without sustained action, the sector will be faced with a very real water crisis. While tackling affordability won't solve climate change, there are synergies from taking a joined-up approach to both challenges, and water efficiency can play a crucial role here. Other steps can be taken to prevent financial problems spiralling out of control. For example, the review heard how our income maximisation assessment, costing around £75, can unlock on average £1,000 of additional income through unclaimed benefits. This type of action presents a very practical lifeline to people struggling. The review calls for water companies to proactively offer this kind of support at the earliest indication that a customer may be struggling. Unfortunately, prevention may not always be possible, and some people will fall into difficulties affording their water bill. We heard from many people as part of this review, including those on extremely tight budgets where only a small change in financial circumstances could push them over the edge. For many in this situation, the enduring nature of a social tariff is not the right type of support, and they may require more immediate and flexible support. We understand that a one-size-fits-all approach may not always work, and this is why the review recommends that a wide range of help is offered, and that help, whether for people in long-term debt or people struggling on a more temporary basis, should be tailored to individual circumstances. For example, the review calls for the action taken when people fall into debt to be more closely aligned to the customer's individual ability to pay. This kind of customer-centric approach can be built into Ofwat's debt guidance. So far, I've highlighted the increase of support that the review proposes. However, even the best support in the whole world would be absolutely meaningless if no one knows about it or can't easily access it. Excellent communications is therefore a vital ingredient to success here. Without it, millions of hard-pressed customers could miss out on the help that they need. Companies should use all the main communications options available to them to raise awareness that help is available. For example, the review heard that an over-reliance on a digital approach runs a risk of isolating millions of customers. A key group here are pensioners, who are far less likely to have internet access than other ages, with 4 in 10 people aged 70 and over being digitally excluded. So getting the basics right can make a huge difference with communications. Simple things like providing easy read and multilingual versions of written material. In addition, common branding for support and putting basic messages in prominent places on bills rather than buried on the 4th, 5th or 6th page will help raise awareness that help and support is out there. The review also heard from many hard-to-reach communities, and that for them, that word of mouth is the best way to communicate. Knowing how to tap into key influencers in communities in order for them to spread the word amongst their networks is a real challenge. The review calls for a framework to be put in place to improve this type of communication. And see, that's an action that we, CC Water, have gladly picked up. So understanding communities as well as customers can unlock a whole host of benefits. For example, the review recommends involving customers and communities in the design and implementation of support. This type of co-creation can lead to better support that everyone can access. Arguably, one of the most important recommendations that emerged from the review is for water companies to better understand the communities that they serve. Data can play a key role here. We live in a world that's awash with data about customers, and it's sliced, diced and repackaged in so many different ways, mainly just focused on selling us things. But it's clear that in water, the full potential and power of data has not yet been tapped into. Much more can be done to share data between organisations, not just within the water sector, but beyond. There's a huge opportunity to better apply data and new technologies to benefit water consumers. So while better data isn't the most eye-catching of recommendations, it's absolutely fundamental for improving help and support. The final thing I want to touch on and highlight here is making it easy for customers. It should be easy for people to interact with the water companies. It should be easy to pay a bill. It should be easy to access support. It should be easy to get water efficiency advice. Now, I'm sure we can all think of examples where dealing with companies, whether it's utilities or companies more widely, can be absolutely painful. Our own lived experiences can go a long way to determine how much we like or trust a company. Now, I'll try at this point not to rant about my internet provider, who is totally incapable of answering the phone. But when it comes to affordability, the stakes are really high, and it's much more important than my internet problems. And making things easy matters a lot. The review heard how a long and complicated application process can be very daunting for someone who, for whatever reason, isn't confident in English. And this will put people off applying for support. The review calls for a streamlining and simplification of the application process. Paying your bill can be made easier too, offering a wide range of payment options, from retaining traditional methods to innovating with new ones, and giving customers the power in their own hands to change the frequency and the amount paid can make a big difference. For example, the ability to flex the amount paid for someone on a 0 hours contract could be the helping hand they need to ensure that they stay afloat. The review calls for these aspects of payment to be improved and updated. And this matters because it helps encourage people to remain in the habit of paying their water bills, yet does so in a way that's sensitive to their financial situation. So in closing, this review listened to the evidence and views of many different people, and the recommendations reflect that broad approach that we took. The recommendations create a simpler, fairer and better system. And that's good news for the 1.5 million households who currently find their bills unaffordable and would benefit from the single social tariff and the end to the postcode lottery. It's also good news for the 3 million households who are only just making ends meet and would benefit from the range of actions that are aimed at preventing them from slipping into financial difficulties. And finally, it's good news for all of us. We'd all benefit from companies that understand our needs better. And ultimately, if we ever need help with our water bills, we'd all have the security and certainty in knowing that support is there for us.
General review on poverty is just incredibly important because we are seeing poverty in this day and age. So we need to take as many steps as we possibly can to eradicate it. So starting with water, I think a great place to look at. People need it, it's essential. Making sure that we can be wide-ranging and look at flexibility, how we address it. It's looking at all the right things for me, which is going to make the whole water sector, water supply, customer recognition, the difficulties that they have better.
So we can see that people have truly ended up finding the last 12 months very tricky financially, never mind emotionally, and we all want to really make sure we level up across the UK, and as such, affordability feels like a brilliant topic for us all to take a real lead on.
Now more than ever, the impact of poverty, and more importantly the impact of water poverty, is having on customers right across the UK. Poverty was here before COVID, and all COVID has sought to do is amplify the challenges that many customers right across the country see and experience every single day. And we need to be in a place where we can make sure that water is affordable, and more importantly, we've got mechanisms right across the UK to make sure that we can really support those customers who are struggling to pay.
Flexibility and recognising that inability to pay is dynamic at times as well. So for some people it's a constant and some people move in and out. So the ability to use the information that we have, the engagement that we already have with customers through our metered bills so they can see their consumption, help them to change consumption and be more flexible in terms of how they pay, when they pay.
But I'm definitely looking forward to the ones around getting to know customers better. So I think we often think we know customers and we have lots of data and lots of research, but I think truly understanding that kind of sense of exactly right now, because people have changed over the last 12 months, so really getting to that sense of what people really think.
I'm really pleased to see that there's a plethora of recommendations, and it's really easy to point to the one over another. And actually I think one of the successes of the report, and more importantly the outcomes of all the work that's happened to date, is actually there's a number of different interventions, and actually there isn't a single bullet, there never is, that will make a difference. It's about how we bring together a number of solutions, how we use data better, how we innovate better, and more importantly how we support better, that will make a difference.
So I would really encourage people to look at this study, to look at the background information it brings, and then to apply it wider across other areas where poverty really impacts, and really use this as the flagship of, well, if we can see it here, we know it's happening elsewhere, and we need to redouble our efforts to eliminate it.
There isn't one thing that suddenly solves this. So affordability, if it was that easy, we would have done it a lifetime ago. Affordability is complex. It's a very personal situation for people. It's often transient. It often arrives at a certain point in time and then it goes away because their circumstances change. And that's why I'm really looking forward to the fact that you've got a basket of different things. And I think it's going to be a combination, a winning combination of a number of those that make a real difference for the future.
I'm really interested to get underneath the impact of the social tariff, what that's going to mean. And more importantly, what that's going to mean consistently right across the country. Because as we know, deprivation is not something that's just felt and experienced by customers in one particular region or in one particular community. And I think the real strength of this work is that for the first time, we're going to have support schemes in place right across the country that, dependent upon where you live, are consistent. And the impacts of postcode lottery that we've all talked about and all been concerned about for such a long time seek to exist. And I think that's something that everybody's got to strive for, because now more than ever we need equality. Equality that makes sure that everybody, regardless of where they live in the UK, gets the help and the support they need consistently to pay their water bill.
Everyone involved in the review felt the real responsibility that this was a once-in-a-decade opportunity that we needed to seize. And we were always super keen to ensure that the review led to real change and had momentum from today. So we were delighted that we're working with 9 leading companies on 8 pilots to help us refine our recommendations and take forward these important actions. CCW will have a key role in leading 9 of the recommendations work streams to deliver the important objectives outlined. And we call on both governments to lead the working group to establish a single social tariff. We truly believe that this review can deliver for all customers and can provide peace of mind and certainty for every household, whatever the future holds. We'd now be delighted to engage with you and answer any questions that you have on our launch. But just before I go to questions, I do want to take a moment to personally thank the advisory group for all their help, support and challenge, and indeed the CCW team, who I'm very proud of and have undertaken this review at an incredibly difficult time. So now I will turn to the chat. Hopefully we'll have some questions coming in. If we don't have time to answer your questions in our session this morning, please don't worry. All questions will be posted on the website and we will provide answers over the next few days to any queries that come in. Okay, so I've had a question from Penny Shepherd. How do you propose to avoid cliff edge where someone is eligible for social tariff gets support, but someone who is ineligible, by saying £1, pays the full cost for supporting others? So that's a good question, and I will turn to Mike in a moment to add a little bit more context to that. I think throughout the review we have gathered some very important criteria that we need to consider in the final design of the scheme, and that is certainly one of them. But Mike, do you have any points that you want to raise, Penny?
Yeah, wherever you draw the line, there's always going to be someone on the other side of the line. And that means you have to be absolutely aware of their needs and how to help them. And we have been really aware of that group who may not qualify for a single social tariff, but run the risk of falling into water poverty. And that's why the review has loads of recommendations for them. I mean, I flagged earlier things like the income maximization review that can actually unlock a whole lot of benefits to also help to permanently lower your bills through saving water, through water efficiency advice. So the review has lots and lots of recommendations in there to help that group of people.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So moving on now, we've had an anonymous question. Are water companies on board with this review and its recommendations? So I'll turn to Andy in a moment, but certainly my personal experience is a categoric yes to that. I've been really delighted with the support that we've had from water companies, the engagement in the review, the time that has been given generously, and as I summarised at the end there, the pilots are something that I'm very, very excited about taking forward. And they all take company time, commitment, and we've had really the best of support in that regard. Andy, is there anything you'd like to add?
Really, just to echo your comments, I think this is an area where companies have always been cooperative and work together for the best to achieve the best for customers. But I think, really absolutely taken aback by how much companies have wanted to work with us, help us achieve our aims. So I think we're very much, all working in the same direction on this one, and very grateful to companies for positive attitude that they've approached this.
Thanks, Andy. Another question's come in. The cost of water bills across the country is not the same. How do you ensure that a common social tariff takes that into account? Who wants to go with that one?
I'm happy to go with that one. So one of the guiding aims behind the single social tariff is that it would be aimed at lifting people out of water poverty. So by doing that, it automatically considers what the water bill would be for that person and what their income is, actually. So by baking that in to the design of the social tariff, it automatically considers the differences in water bills up and down the country. Andy, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that?
No, just really obviously to say, by linking with that relationship between income and bill level, you make sure that wherever anyone lives, they're getting just the right amount of help to lift them out of that water poverty position.
When you have a chance to read the report, you'll see that a number of ways to deliver a single social tariff are explored. So whoever posed that question might be interested to see our considerations, the other options that we considered, and obviously all of that work will go forward into the next phase of this review, which of course is the most important bit, the making it happen part. Got another question, says, what does CCW see as the most important of the recommendations? Andy, do you want to take that one first, and then I'll go to Mike?
I think it's really difficult, and I think everyone is immediately drawn to the social tariff option because it's big and it's an issue I think that's been bubbling under for a while. But I think in focusing on that, there's a danger that you miss lots of really good things that are in there, and we've really sort of looked across the range from the people who are just need a little bit of extra flexibility with their payments to keep them their head above water and not run into difficulties, through to people who are just unaware of the help that's available, right through to those that are in water poverty. So I think it is slightly ducking the question, but I think the whole package is a really good one that addresses the needs, whether people are in poverty or just on that cusp of falling into difficulties.
Mike, do you have a favourite?
Andy's right. As part of the review, we deliberately didn't try and present recommendations in any kind of prioritization. I think that was the right thing to do. And I think we all have personal favourites that we're drawn to, and as Andy flagged, the single social tariff is clearly the most eye-catching. But I think that whole understanding of customers and knowing how to communicate with them is really crucial, because that taps into the design of support. It taps into being able to deliver the support, and obviously that is linked to better use of data as well. And I think there's this huge potential there for us collectively as a sector to do something really, really exciting with that, to just show that we know our customers, we have a relationship with them, and ultimately, if they are struggling, we're going to offer that helping hand.
Absolutely. My personal favourite actually is the help on the outside of the envelope, and I'll explain that. The report, as Andy mentioned, involved engaging a number of research projects. One of those was very much designed to hear the real voice of water customers, the problems that they're actually experiencing today. And in there is some very powerful commentary and some very important things for us all to collectively consider. And one of those was just that very human emotion of not feeling they were able to open a water bill, or indeed any kind of bill, due to the fear of opening that bill. And therefore, one of our recommendations in terms of putting information on the outside of the bill, which again is one of the pilot projects, to me is the sort of thing we absolutely should be doing and should be doing now, and is one of those practical things that when someone says it, you think, of course. So yeah, that's my favourite recommendation, I think. Okay, so a question in from Mark Grice. What has been DEFRA and Welsh Government's initial response been to the recommendations, particularly the single social tariff? So again, I'll start, and Mike and Andy can jump in if they wish to add anything. DEFRA and Welsh Government obviously commissioned the review and therefore had, I guess, questions around how the current system was working. And indeed, we were specifically tasked with looking for recommendations and improvements. They've been active and keen members of the working group all the way through, and therefore, have been engaged in the discussion around the single social tariff. So obviously, we've only simply presented the final report to them today, and they'll need some time to think about it. But we're hopeful that this recommendation will be something that both governments actively consider as a solution to this difficult challenge. So question now from Steve Crabb. Have you considered directly linking social tariff eligibility and debt counselling income maximisation to address the root causes of financial hardship? Andy, would you like to pick that one up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are really important aspects of the picture in terms of supporting customers, and that's why that is one of the actions within our recommendations. That at the first point that a customer gets in touch to say that they're having difficulties, companies should offer wider holistic debt support, giving access to that, and/or income maximisation, checking that customers are getting all the benefits that they're entitled to. So I think those are key steps, and it's part of that whole journey on the route to obviously seeing then also if they can be supported through a social tariff. But yeah, the first thing that companies should do is that, and that's clear in our recommendations.
And I think it's also worth noting that, again, the evidence from debt advice agencies very much points to the need for the water sector to have a consistent support and a consistent approach to water poverty issues. It was very much that community that highlighted the challenges of dealing with multiple schemes, irrespective of how strong those schemes are individually. It just makes it very, very complicated for people to access. Okay, so we now have a question from Jess Cook. If you had the ability to do so, is there another area which each of you would like to focus on, and perhaps which impacts the level of water bills, but not necessarily the support offered? So, is there another area which each of you would like to focus on, perhaps which impacts the level of water bills, but not necessarily the support offered? Thank you, Jess. I'm looking to see whether Mike or Andy wants to go first on that. Good challenge.
I mean, I think obviously our work on the price review has always been focused on trying to make sure that customers get the best deal. And that is also about price, but also about delivering the improvements that they expect from the price review. So I think we'll continue to fight hard for customers in that field. I feel particularly at the last price review, we're obviously we're made good progress on that front.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because we've got to be quite careful that we're not suggesting that bills should just, we should just be hammering down bills at all costs. We don't want customers to pay more than they should. Absolutely. What we want is customers to have value. And that's absolutely critical, because we mentioned it earlier, there's huge challenges facing the sector. Affordability is one of them. But you can't go into affordability blind to other challenges such as climate change. So there will be upwards pressures on bills, and that's why the recommendations in this report are so important. Because if we are going to have to take the other challenges seriously, which we need to do as a sector, we also then need to make sure there's comprehensive support in for people who can't afford their bills. So I've dodged the question a bit there, but I do think the most important thing there is that customers receive value.
Yeah, and I'm just going to also slightly duck it by echoing Mike's point. I have always seen having an improved and consistent support for those who need help as an enabler to tackling some of the more and equally challenging issues that exist in the sector, which are highly likely to require investment, which needs to be of value, etc. But is a realistic assessment of the current position. So I've got a question now in from Zoe McLeod. What did you learn from the energy sector about what to do with a sector-wide social tariff? That's a great question. I'll make a comment first and then turn to Andy and Mike. I think the thing that I most came to my mind is when I had a conversation with the Warm Home Discounts team. They were very clear about the merits and otherwise of having a very clear kind of policy proxy for affordability, and the challenges that being that kind of specific about the group you're trying to help brought. Clearly it has benefits and advantages, but we've tried to take that thinking into our review by being very focused around the people that need help. So that kind of setting the policy proxy carefully was one of the things that I think I learned on this journey. But if Mike or Andy have got any comments.
Yeah, mine was a similar take on that, on the Warm Homes Discount, which has a kind of primary focus on pensioners, although can help others too. And that sort of learning that just be careful about who you're pitching it at, and are you really pitching it at the right people? I think that's a very clear lesson for us, which we've paid attention to.
And just to flip that, I think the positive thing that was pointed out to us during the review was the auto-enrolment feature of the Warm Homes Discount. And obviously we would very much like to make that a feature of the social tariff going forward, so that people we're not relying on people coming forward for help. We can be proactive in getting that help to them.
Okay, and I think I'll make this the last question from Steve Crabb. Are you recommending that water companies use the Digital Economy Act to find customers on means-tested benefit from the DWP? So I think that's an Andy question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that links to the point that I've just made before. Companies have started the trials on that. It's early stages, but we think it's got much promise. We want to see that go further, to really target in on those customers that need help, so that they, we don't have to rely on them coming forward. They can get the help they need automatically.
Thank you. Well, thank you all very much for taking the time out of your diaries to listen and engage in our launch today. Please do go to the CCW website to find a copy of the full report. There's lots of detail in there, lots of recommendations that we're excited to present to the sector. And we look forward to working collaboratively with you all to take this important issue forward and to help customers. Thank you for your time.